All right, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, Chapter 3. So the first big idea I want to talk about is don't seek yourself in your mind. And the big thing that Eckhart's trying to point at here is this is how we move from the unconscious state to more of a conscious state. This is what this whole book is about. Seeking yourself in your mind is another way of saying completely identified with every thought in your head. That is this unconscious state that he talks about. Here he defines this basic dysfunction of the unconscious state as identification with the mind, which creates a false self, the ego, as a substitute for your true self. Being unconscious, that's every thought that you have, you just respond to that as if it was absolute truth. You don't see them as a thought. You just believe every thought that comes into your mind, and you react and respond to every little tangent that your mind takes you on. This is the unconscious state. And so turning it into a self is when all of our thoughts about ourselves, we say those thoughts are me. We can't see that my thoughts about myself are thoughts. They're not who I am in the deepest sense. But in this unconscious state, our thoughts about ourselves are who we believe that we are. This is the false self. This is the ego. Ego is a group of thoughts that we give too much energy to and we believe is truly who we really are. So he says, the problems of the mind cannot be solved on the level of the mind. Once you have understood the basic dysfunction, there isn't really much else that you need to learn or understand. Studying the complexities of the mind may make you a good psychologist, but doing so won't take you beyond the mind, just as the study of madness isn't enough to create sanity. It reminds me of this parable called The Poison Arrow, and it's about a guy gets struck by a poison arrow, and he needs to get that arrow out and the antidote immediately because the poison's setting in and he's dying. So a doctor rushes over and says, let me treat your wound and give you the antidote. And the guy says, whoa, before you do that, I want to know who shot the arrow. And I also want to know, were they using a crossbow or a longbow? And then I want to know, what kind of poison is it? And I want to learn all about that. And then I want to know, what kind of wood was used to make that arrow? And then I want to know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Of course, the point of this parable is to say, dude, you've got your priorities all wrong. You're trying to overthink this thing to death and learn everything there is to know about it. You need to first address that wound, get the antidote. You need to get to the solution right now and stop overanalyzing and trying to think your way through. Another quote Eckhart says is, imagine the chief of police is looking for an arsonist, but the arsonist is the chief of police. It's like saying, I want to use my mind to think my way to solve this identification with thinking. You can't think your way out of this solution. You need to realize there's you, and then there's the thoughts that you're having. That's the dysfunction there. More thinking about it, more analyzing it is not the way out. So he also says, when you are present, you can allow the mind to be as it is without getting entangled in it. The mind in itself is not dysfunctional. It is a wonderful tool. Dysfunction sets in when you seek yourself in it and mistake it for who you are. It then becomes the egoic mind that takes over your whole life. The next big idea is end the delusion of time. This one's a bit trickier to understand, and he talks about time in two different ways. He talks about psychological time, which is this sort of denial of the present moment in putting all of our focus on some future to come or some past thing that happened and giving them more attention than the present moment, the thing that's real in front of us. That's psychological time. And then he talks about clock time, which is more the practical use of time, calendars, clocks, and the things that we all need to do to function in this world. And he's not saying get rid of all of your clocks and calendars and, that's not end the delusion of time. That's not what he means by that. But there's a couple sections that I want to read in here that I think are super helpful. He says, Have you ever experienced, done, thought, or felt anything outside of the now? Do you think you ever will? Is it possible for anything to happen or be outside of the now? The answer is obvious, is it not? Nothing ever happened in the past, it happened in the now. Nothing will ever happen in the future, it will happen in the now. What you think of as the past is a memory trace stored in the mind of a former now. When you remember the past, you reactivate a memory trace, and you do so now. The future is an imagined now, a projection of the mind. When the future comes, it comes as the now. When you think about the future, you do so now. Past and future obviously have no reality of their own. Just as the moon has no light of its own, but can only reflect the light of the sun, so are the past and the future only a pale reflection of the light, power, and reality of the eternal present. Their reality is borrowed from the now. Talking about the difference between psychological time and clock time, he says this: learn to use time in the practical aspects of your life. We may call this clock time, but immediately return to the present moment awareness when those practical matters have been dealt with. In this way, there's no buildup of psychological time, which is identification with the past and continuous compulsive projection into the future. He talks about clock time here. Clock time is not just making appointments or planning a trip. It includes learning from the past so we don't have to repeat the same mistakes over and over, setting goals and working towards them, predicting the future by means of patterns, laws, physical, mathematical, and so on. Learn from the past and taking appropriate action on the basis of our predictions. This is a key distinction here between psychological time and clock time. He's saying learn from the past, but do it here in the now. Realize that now is all you ever have. He says the enlightened person's main focus of attention is always the now, but they're still peripherally aware of time. In other words, they continue to use clock time, but are free of psychological time. One example they give in the book of being free from psychological time is when this guy talks about looking at a tree and seeing it without all the thinking about it, analyzing it, defining it, but setting all the thoughts aside and just sort of being with it. And he said he could see the tree in a new, deeper way than he's ever seen it before. And I know I've definitely experienced these types of things. Maybe you have as well. But he asks Eckhart about it, and Eckhart says, you were free of time for a moment. You moved into the now and therefore perceived the tree without the screen of mind. The mind cannot know the tree. It can only know facts or information about the tree. The mind cannot know you, only labels, judgments, facts, and opinions about you. Being alone knows directly. I know for me personally, when I'm stuck in psychological time, always the past and the future, it affects my relationship so much. When I go into a relationship with a person and I am already thinking, I know what's going to happen, or I know what they're going to say because this is what they always say. This is me bringing the past to the now. And I know how they're going to respond, blah, blah, blah. That closes me off. It puts a screen in front of my eyes from seeing what they are really going to say. Instead of being with them, I'm looking at the past, trying to prove that I was right, or I'm trying to see if my predictions in the future happen the way that I thought they would. And then I'm only partially there. My body's there, but my mind is elsewhere. And so being free of the psychological time of the past and the future, just being with the person in that moment. There's no judgment. There's just love and openness and connection. And my relationships have thrived so much more when I can get out of my head and just be with that person. So Eckhart is really challenging us to end the delusion of time, all the projections into the future and bringing up the past, and realize that the present is all we ever really have. And so I'll read this last section to end this. He says, "When I say time is an illusion, my intention is not to make a philosophical statement. I'm just reminding you of a simple fact, a fact so obvious that you may find it hard to grasp and even find it meaningless. But once fully realized, it can cut like a sword through all the mind-created layers of complexities and problems. Let me say it again. The present moment is all you ever have. There is never a time when your life is not this moment. Is that not a fact?" All right, so the last big idea in this chapter is called "All problems are illusions of the mind." Now, I know when I hear this, I go, no, I have problems. They're not illusions. Trust me, maybe you're feeling that way too. So let's talk about it a little bit and let's get into what he means here. First thing, I want to read a little quote here. He says, "All negativity is caused by an accumulation of psychological time and denial of the present. Unease, anxiety, tension, stress, worry, all forms of fear are caused by too much future and not enough presence. Guilt, regret, resentments, grievances, sadness, bitterness, and all forms of non-forgiveness are caused by too much past and not enough presence. You may find it hard to recognize that time is the cause of your suffering or your problems. You may believe that they are caused by specific situations in your life, and seen from a conventional viewpoint, this is true. But until you have dealt with the basic problem-making dysfunction of the mind, an attachment to the past and future and a denial of the now, problems are actually interchangeable. If all of your problems or perceived causes of suffering or unhappiness were miraculously removed for you today, but you had not become more present, more conscious, you would soon find yourself with a similar set of problems or causes of suffering, like a shadow that follows you wherever you go. Ultimately, there's only one problem, the time-bound mind itself." He talks about the difference of your life and your life situation, where your life is what's happening right now in the present moment. This is your life right here. And your life situation is sort of a concept, an idea about all the things that happened before and all the things that are coming up that I have to do, and all of these things that are outside of right now, which is your actual life right now. And he says, when you're full of problems, there's no room for anything new to enter, no room for any solution. So whenever you can, make some room, create some space so you can find the life underneath your life situation. Now, when he says all problems are illusions of the mind, he makes an interesting distinction between problems and situations. He says, if you find yourself in paradise, it wouldn't be long before your mind would say, yes, but ultimately, this is not about solving your problems. It's about realizing that there are no problems, only situations to be dealt with now or to be left alone and accepted as a part of the isness of the present moment until they change or can be dealt with. Problems are mind-made and need time to survive. They cannot survive in the actuality of the now. So I love this little challenge he does for us. So join me in this. He says, focus your attention on the now and tell me what problem you have at this moment. It's kind of an interesting question, right? He says, I'm not getting an answer because it's impossible to have a problem when your attention is fully in the now. A situation that either needs to be dealt with or accepted, yes. Why make it into a problem? Why make anything into a problem? Isn't life challenging enough as it is? What do you need problems for? The mind unconsciously loves problems because they give you an identity of sorts. This is normal and it's insane. Problem means you are dwelling on a situation mentally without there being a true intention or possibility of taking action now, and that you are unconsciously making it a part of your sense of self. You become so overwhelmed by your life situation that you lose your sense of life, of being. Or you're carrying in your mind the insane burden of 100 things that you will or may have to do in the future instead of focusing your attention on the one thing you can do now. So as I reflect on my own life, thinking about the problems that I have, many of them can be traced to something that already happened that's in the past that I can't change now. So it's like this problem I'm experiencing is something that's already over that I keep bringing back into the now and saying, I wish it was different or I wish I could change it. I think Eckhart is really encouraging us to take a look at our problems and say, how many of these problems are right here? And how many of them are the past that we're bringing up or the worries of the future that are coming? So I'll end this section with this last piece. He says, some people get angry when they hear me say that problems are illusions. I'm threatening to take away their sense of who they are. They have invested much time in a false sense of self. For many years, they have unconsciously defined their whole identity in terms of their problems or suffering. Who would they be without it? All right, well, I hope you found this video helpful. I love making these videos, and please join us for our next video on Chapter 4. And instead of asking you to like and subscribe to this page, I would encourage you to turn off all of your screens and go outside and enjoy the present moment. Thank you.